sit back in your seats, get something to eat, and watch this movie. Don't let the kiddies see it, because, well, we'll let you hear the beginning first. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Left of the Projector. I am your host, Evan, back again with another film discussion from the left. Before we get into our conversation this week, I wanted to make a couple quick housekeeping announcements. The first, in addition to the already existing TikTok account, Left of the Projector Pod, and YouTube account, Left of the Projector Pod, you can also follow the show on Instagram at also Left of the Projector Pod. So whatever your platform of choice is, but yes, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram at Left of the Projector Pod. All right, so this week on the podcast, I have Nelson, who is on Dixieland of the Proletariat, one of my favorites to listen to. So, Nelson, I appreciate you joining.
No problem. Glad to be on.
Yeah, cool. So, I said in the intro we were talking about They Live, one of John Carpenter's classics, and I'm a huge John Carpenter fan in general, just mostly from like his early horror movies. But I feel like this movie, while it's not a horror movie, is pretty, it's a prophetic and a horror of a different kind, a horror of capitalism.
Yeah. It really is like a horror of a different kind because it's too real almost. It's kind of too on the nose in some bits, but yeah, it's definitely one of those like freaky sci-fi type deals. As Slavoj Žižek said, it's one of the great films of the Hollywood left.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't watched or know who Žižek is, he has a movie about this, not just about this, but he's has a movie that discusses this movie in particular, They Live. And so for the people out there who haven't seen this 80s campy classic, it's one you should definitely check out. It's really very 80s. You really can't get any more 80s than that. It's great. Yeah, it's so it's I mean, all John Carpenter movies are pretty cheesy, but this might be the cheesiest of them all.
I remember when I saw it in we have an independent theater in town, and they showed it a while ago. We were watching it, and it glitched in the beginning. The actual film glitched. And my friend said, this movie is all about the conspiracy of big trains, because it kept showing the intro over where John Nada's walking through the train yard. And we just busted out laughing because the timing was perfect. It was like, it's a conspiracy about big train. How big train is going to take over.
I mean, that would have been awesome if trains took over. Instead, we have these stupid cars.
I know, right?
But yeah, the movie in general, I mean, there's been a lot of writing about it. I think we'll kind of like probably touch on the plot. I mean, the plot is pretty straightforward. I mean, you have John Nada, who they don't really mention his name until the credits. But just also one thing about it too is it's actually based on a short story called 8 o'clock in the morning, where all these people
yeah.
So that's I didn't actually know that until like last week when I was looking just at some things that John Carpenter had said about it. And so it's based on this short story by Ray Faraday Nelson, another Nelson. And so it's I think it's only about 50 pages long, and it's about people who are asleep to what's happening around in the world, but one guy wakes up, and so we're meant to see that as John Nada as like for a while he believes he's the only one who can see, but then he comes to see that he's not the only one out there
after that epic fight scene.
Yes, I was looking that up because every time I see the movie, I'm like always trying to clock how long it is. So it's 5 minutes and 20 seconds for a fight scene.
Which is great because for people who haven't seen it, and for like wrestling nerds like me, John Nada's played by none other than Rowdy Ronnie Piper.
Yep.
And so just him like WWE fake wrestling this fight is great. They couldn't have picked like a better person to play John Nada.
No, and apparently when John Carpenter wanted to make the movie, he had him in mind, as well as Keith David, who plays Frank. And the craziest thing is the fight scene was supposed to be 20 seconds. And they're like, no. We're going to have an awesome fight scene. And so they practiced the fight scene for almost 3 weeks to come up with it. And apparently some of the shots are actually real. Like only the face shots and like I think the stomach shots are faked. Whereas the rest of them, I think, is real. I don't know. I don't think they actually got nearly as injured as the show. But like some of it, like wrestling would be, you know, there's some pain involved.
Yeah, definitely.
But to kind of talk about everyone's probably seen I feel like the poster for the movie is where, you know, Roddy Piper is putting his glasses down and he's seeing the world for what it is. But I mean, I don't know when you first saw this movie, but did you, at the point you did see it, did you know what you were watching, or is it more like, I'm watching this? Because I watched it more recently. I don't know, I'd say like 4 years ago for the first time.
Yeah.
5 years ago. And I feel like I understood the movie, but as I watched every time, I've get more.
So with me, I watched Žižek's interpretation of it, and then I got a chance to actually watch it because I'm not gonna pay for it, but like I'm not gonna like pay Jeff Bezos to watch it, but like it just happened to be playing at our local independent theater, so it's like we gotta go see this. So I had already seen Žižek's interpretation, so when I watched the full movie for the first time, I was like, wow, okay, that makes sense. Because I don't think I watched. They have clips of Žižek's thing on
only
YouTube,
a couple,
right? And the big one is They Live. Like I remember watching that particular one and not having seen the whole movie, and then when I watched the whole movie, then it clicked. And then I've watched it's Pervert's Guide to Ideology a few times. So I'm more so like I don't want to say like his interpretation kind of like warped what I saw, but I would have already probably agreed with what he said about the movie if I hadn't have listened to what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you see it, especially, you know, as a, you know, someone on the left, you're going to see this movie and it's pretty. John Carpenter's like, I'm not messing around with like symbols and, you know, ideas. Like this is pretty straightforward. He says it's about the Reagan era because it came out in '88. There's so many nods. There's so many awesome quotes. Like in the very opening scene after Nada's like walking into like an unemployment, there's like a little like a announcement over the loudspeaker that says the food stamp program has been canceled due to a computer glitch, and it's like perfect encapsulation of the Reagan.
Exactly.
Reagan era. It's like on the nose, but it's it's good still.
Yeah, and then like one of the was it the first like actually probably the first big shootout scene is in a bank. Like he goes and basically shoots up a bank. Like you can't get more anti-capitalist than like robbing and shooting up a bank.
Right, and he's not even in there to rob it. He's just like goes in and they're like,
oh
shit.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's right. I think
no, you're right because he has the glasses on and he sees who's an alien and who's not, and he just starts blowing away the aliens. Eventually, have the great line, "I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum."
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, yeah. So he that was like the one line. So apparently he wrote a bunch of lines for the movie, and that's the only one they used. Which, like, I think it was like an old line he used for wrestling.
It probably
or
was.
Like a version of one he used, because apparently he would write his own lines when he would do interviews for wrestling, which also is perfect that he's writing his own lines.
Oh my god!
But this, I guess, is the only one that fit with the movie, and it's probably one of the like a super quoted line, and I didn't know when I was like younger where it came from until I saw the movie. Like, oh shit, that's They Live. So
yeah, yeah, and then like I think there's one part where he tries to get a job. He's not part of the union, but then he gets in anyway. And then and at the end, you see they're all living in basically what amounts to like a shanty town, like a Hooverville type deal. So it really does like compare and contrast like the ritzy L.A., rich folks, basically, and then you have the workers that are living in squalor, basically.
Yeah, and you have the only female character really in the movie, which is Holly, which you learn in the end, spoilers if you haven't seen it, ends up being like betraying them. But she lives in this beautiful, like, top of the hills, not Hollywood, I don't know LA geography, but like somewhere way up in the hills. And then you have them living in this town, like you said, and basically what amounted to like a mutual aid for people living in tents. And then then of course the cops come in and bulldoze it down.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. They do come in and basically, like they're trying to do now with homeless encampments, just like clearing them out. Yeah.
Yeah. They so it was like the first piece where they the cops like are kind of on to the people who are trying to push out the message. So part of the whole movie and the kind of the culmination of like the glass and everything is you have a group of people and a reverend who is kind of like speaking. He's like, he's, I don't know what you would call him, like trying to deliver the message to the people through like the church or through God.
Yeah. So it's like kind of like an homage to like liberation theology. Like it's kind of like, it's just coming to the realization that capitalism is not working through like religious allegories and metaphors and things like that. Like kind of when people are like getting to like the quote unquote like original teachings of Jesus, stuff like that. So yeah, I could see like a liberation theology type.
Yeah, and then you find out he is working with this basically like an underground group to and like the thing that I was like been debating. I know we're kind of like I know we talked about a little bit like the capitalism aspect, of the movie of like consumption. Actually, we didn't really talk about that yet, but the thing that I've been thinking about, obviously this movie is super class based. We talked about the people living in tents and unions and workers, and then you have the rich people living in the hills. But I've been like thinking of like how the aliens are meant to be viewed. Are they like the capitalists as like, they're kind of basically controlling everything, or is it almost some other aspect?
So if you go into like or if you think about it, if you think of like capitalism being like a virus, well, she's like says like it's like the traditional invasion of the body snatchers type deal.
Yeah.
But then I think what he goes on later on to talk about like in Jaws, that like the shark itself represents big capital. So you can say like like imperialism and stuff like that. So like you could say that like the aliens really are like this invading almost like imperialistic force that brings like this capitalist economic or like thrives off of it to like start enslaving people. Right.
And then I think there's the aspect where they when Nada meets up with some of the other people, the other group, I think one of them mentions how the aliens are basically coming to Earth and treating it like it's like, they say the third world, they say global south. They're treating Earth like it's just another resource.
And yeah, basically, so at the end, right, where you see them, they can like come and go like through this galactic.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's explaining
like,
why they go.
Time, this whatever they can do, like some Elon Musk like futuristic like time
hyperloop
space
that
travel.
Works.
Yeah, hyperloop that works. But yeah, so they basically just use Earth as like a playground. So you could look at it as like imperialists and capitalists using like the global south and poor areas as like a playground.
I mean, really, there's only really three people in the movie. You have John Nada, you have Frank, who's played by Keith David, and then Meg Foster, who's that Holly character. But the struggle in the movie, and I think what makes that fight scene so cool, is that I feel like it's meant to be this like struggle maybe with other people or within society of people who've actually like awoken to understanding what's going on. And then Frank's like, no, I don't want to put on the glasses. I don't. And I think he knows. That's the thing that my interpretation is that he knows what he'll see, but he doesn't want to see it.
I don't want to do that like allegory of the cave type deal. But like, I think, and I am gonna reference back to Žižek a lot for this because like I even referenced him, or I tried to reference him in my master's thesis, but my professors kind of pushed back on that because they didn't like the idea of like glasses and ideology in the media and whatnot. They were like, no, it's more a subconscious type thing. I was like, all right, whatever, metaphysics. We can talk about that later, weirdos. But I think when he talks about the whole the struggle to break out of ideology and to like see things for what it is and not like with the rose colored glasses that we all see things through, like obviously we as leftists are going to see the world differently than someone who's like a fascist or even a conservative or a liberal. So it's trying to break out, it's that violence to break out of that mindset of how we see the world. And you can think of it kind of as an awakening for when like we were all probably either moderates or liberals at some point. I know some leftists used to be conservatives, and then like you finally see the world for what it is, and that whole mindset, your whole mindset's changed. And it's not, I mean, people throw around violence a lot, but it is like a kind of a mind shattering thing when you used to view the world one way, and then you're like, oh my God, the world is actually this way. Like I had people that I knew in undergrad that were big into like that bullshit libertarian, like Students for Liberty thing. And then they started getting jobs and they realized like, wow, actually, capitalism sucks. It was like, yeah, good job. I'm glad you finally figured that out.
They needed proof. They needed to see it with their own eyes.
Yeah. And they at first they were like, oh, the government's stealing money out of my paycheck. And then they're like, oh, my bosses suck. They won't give me the hours I need and I can't get health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, yeah, congrats. I'm glad. But it's like that. They needed that push. Like they needed their eyes to be open, or to put on the glasses, or whatever you want to call it. Žižek says that it should have been the glasses come off, and that's when you see the world. But that whole change in perspective to finally see things for what it is. And I think that like that fight scene is a symbol for that. Like that is the the fight scene, I don't know, the metaphor, whatever you want to say, but like that whole aspect of it is like fighting to see struggling to see the world for how it is. And like a lot of times we don't want to see the world for how it is. We would love to all think that everything's happy-go-lucky and great when it's not. So being able to like finally see that the world is shitty because of capitalism, that sucks. Like a fight's like getting punched in the face.
Right. I mean, and like you see them afterwards and they're like bloodied up and
they beat the shit out of each other.
They really did. Like, I mean, that I feel like there's like of all the and what's crazy is that scene is actually towards like the last, I feel like the last 30 minutes of the movie, like in an incredible amount of things happen. Like it goes from, they get the group that's kind of underground gets mowed down by the police, and then they escape, and then he gets, uses one of their crazy little wristwatches to end up in the underground, where the aliens are having their thing, which is like so cool. And then that's where they see what you said, the like the machine that shoots them off into another society. And then I think one of the final few scenes too is where they're in this like basement or whatever it is, this underground city, and there's this like room filled with like the bourgeoisie, upper class elites, getting a speech or lecture or whatever by some alien who's like, I don't know what you would call him. He wasn't the president, but something where he's telling them that their profits went up like 86%, or he's like throwing around like, oh, you got a couple of zeros in your a new house. And so they're basically they're not so subtly saying that like they're using you completely so that more numbers and they have higher stock prices and all that.
And you can look at it like how the aliens, like when any imperialistic force like come in, and they obviously, when they set up a colonial government, they're going to pull from the native population like an upper class that is in line with them. So you can look at it as like if the aliens are going to be like this imperialistic force, that that segment of the human population is going to go along with the aliens because it makes their lives better. So you can even look at it as like that if you want to take it like an imperialistic approach to this movie, that the aliens are the imperialists, the humans that go along with it are the like what would be the native population that goes along with the imperialist and colonialist cause in order to better their own lives, and the rest of everyone else is just getting destroyed under the system.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Not like maybe I don't know, a few months ago I read the Fanon's book.
Yeah, I need to read that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Wretched Earth.
Wretched of the Earth. Yeah, and it talks so like there's I think it's the first or second chapter. It's like it seems dense, the book, but it's like he writes it in a really relatable way, but he talks a lot about how in those colonies in Africa where they did just what you're saying, is they would convince the people who already were somewhat wealthy to basically be, I don't want to say they're class traders, but traders to their own people to go along with, they're
collaborators.
Like that's a better word for it.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, especially during World War II. in the Pacific Theater, like Japanese collaborators, like in Korea and in Manchuria and a number of other places that they were collaborated with the Japanese. And then later after the war, they ended up becoming like the ruling class in South Korea.
Right,
So,
exactly. Yeah. And so so that you have the aliens sort of sprinkled in to the this group, and they don't, because they're using sort of like the culminating moment of the movie is there's this satellite on the building, and when they destroyed it, Nada shoots a gun at it, and that cuts the signal so people now can see the people on TV are aliens. The people
and they're like, what's happening?
Right, right. And so that they've all now, and then they can also, the thing that they don't explain or they don't show is, I wonder if with the signal ending, do they then be able to see like the signs? Because that's also like the big thing with like the obey sign, which is like I can't think of that artist who like used that to basically build his career.
I know you're talking about,
the guy who did the Obama one too.
Yeah. You're right. I don't know if they ever actually told you what happened with the quote unquote ideology of the marketing and the signs and whatnot.
Right.
That would be
because
really
the glasses makes him see it because it cuts through the signal. I think presumably everything is like completely lifted to the point where everyone now is like, oh crap, they're just using us for this whole thing. Yeah. And the what was I going to say about that too? Yeah. That's like one of the coolest scenes maybe in the whole movie. And I think that Žižek uses that in his movie too.
Oh yeah. Big time.
The scene where he's put, but like you said, he talked about taking off the glasses as opposed to on, but him putting it on and seeing like the newspaper saying like marry, procreate, all these things. So that's the message we're getting.
And that's what I kind of touched on that in my thesis about the media and democracy. When we were talking about in that we puts the glasses on and he sees like there's one scene where like, it says like obey and it's like marry and reproduce, and then he looks at the money, it's like this is your God. And the whole idea that like the real messaging behind what these advertisements are really trying to tell you and how they can warp your perception and get you to think and believe things even without actually saying it. And you see that in the media a lot. And I was trying to say like with MSNBC, Fox, and all that other stuff can like warp how you view certain political ideas and stuff like that to influence elections, et cetera, and democracy. Those few minutes, I think, really, and it's in the movie, Carpenter does it so well. Like, there's not a lot of dialogue. It's really just like him walking and putting on the glasses and taking them off. And I think the only thing that's said really is when the merchant was just like,
he's like, are you gonna pay for that? Or
you're gonna pay for that, buddy? I don't want no problems. It was like that was literally it. And like the whole, just seeing that and seeing like what John Nada sees when he puts those glasses on, it makes you really think like, wow. Like that really is what these advertisements say. Like, what's the whole purpose of like people worship money? Like that was the big one, I think, a lot of people, and it kind of goes back to like the Reagan era, like you were talking about how like the 80s were like all about big capital and like Wall Street and everything. Like this is what you're worshiping now. Like this is all you care about is money.
Honestly, there isn't even that much dialogue in other parts of this movie. Like there's lots of the first like 6 minutes, the first 5 minutes is him just walking and just
walking around.
The showing you, and I think he walks from like the like you said, from the train, and then he walks into the downtown and he sees like the wealthy part, and then he gets to like the working class part, and it's very separated in the movie. Like the working class, and they don't really show you a middle class in this movie. And I took that to being like, because Reagan freaking killed it.
I think that's a good point. I didn't even notice that, but like no, you bring up a good point. There really isn't. It's really just rich and poor. And I think that is an homage to Reagan just gutting the middle class. Like the really only that you can't, no, there really isn't. It really is like just starkly, these people are poor and these people are rich. Or like maybe a few people like sprinkled in that you could think are middle class, like maybe like bank tellers and like maybe the guy that owns the book stand.
The store, yeah.
Yeah, but like other than that, it really is distinctly like these people are poor, these people are rich, and Reagan just gutted the middle class.
Yeah, that's I hadn't even thought about that until now, because you don't ever see, like you see him drive up into the fancy neighborhood, and then you see the shanty town or the whatever you want to call it, the tent city. But yeah, the only time I can think of, like one point they're hiding from the police and they go into some like small building, but it's still like a pretty crummy home. Like it's still like pretty beaten up. So I wouldn't say it's any middle class. But the disparity between the two, like the rich and the poor, is. I know what I was going to mention too. Was you're talking about in the thesis in the aspect. The one thing I found some article that was talking a little bit about using Žižek's his movie, and he talks about how the capitalists. I think the term that this article used was the capitalists kind of create this false consciousness. And I think that's what those ads are doing is like they're making you believe that you need. I mean, that's the whole point of advertising. Like one of my favorite scenes early in that movie is like he's drinking the Coke and he's like in the desert and he's like this. Here
we have a Coke, and as you see, it's great. I love him.
But objectively, Coke doesn't quench your thirst. It just makes you more thirsty. But you've been convinced and to obey. I think obey your thirst would think was Sprite, but still, like the idea of like of needing some carbonated black beverage, which objectively can be tasty sometimes. But those ads are they're there to create this illusion of all these things that you need, so that you buy crap from all these big companies, like the 4 companies that are left in the world.
Exactly, and I think he mentions like as the Coke like loses its carbonation and gets hotter, like is it really even a Coke at that point? Like it's just it starts to wear down, and you start to see like, hey, maybe this really isn't like what I've been told is great all this time. And it brings up the point that like the more you drink, the more you get thirsty. You get addicted to the sugar. It doesn't quench your thirst. It's bad for you. But yeah, so it's all about marketing, like you said. It's just all about like and I love how he throws in the old Coca-Cola commercials in there. So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, but that's all marketing is. It's all about like tricking you into thinking you need something when you don't.
Yeah, it's that's the other thing too. That's sort of on top of it is like the commercialism and just needing to own and buy stuff that you just don't need, because as capitalism has to grow. If they don't keep making profits and finding ways to make them, it can't it eats itself, or whatever you want to say. So they have to ever expand, and that's the other thing too with the aliens and their being in this finding Earth is presumably they had the technology to go to any planet. So eventually, when the resources of Earth run out, they will go on to another. And so I don't. There isn't really much talk about like environmentalism or like climate change, except that was the only thing I could tweak or slide that into is they're going to use the global South for its resources or Earth, and eventually when there's nothing left, they have to move on. But I don't know if that's really. He doesn't. In any of his interviews, he doesn't mention climate change. I guess it's kind of early 80s.
Yeah, I think that you could even look at it like a more modern update would be like Independence Day, when the aliens come in and they need our resources, they need our water, and then there's that other movie that had some actors, I can't remember their names, where the aliens come in and they need our water. So, but yeah, it's this classic like what we think. It's funny, and I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson actually talk about this, that because Stephen Hawkins, when he was alive, he said that like he feared the day that humans ever came in contact with aliens, because it'll be like when Columbus, quote unquote, discovered the new world, and we all know what happened then. But then Neil deGrasse Tyson was like, we're projecting our own flaws onto these aliens. Like we don't know what they could be about. But it's funny how like every single alien movie, if you really think about it, has an alien force coming to Earth to subjugate humans, when we don't understand that we don't understand that we're actually doing it to ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
Like slap an American flag on the like alien ship in Independence Day, and the Earth is basically the global South. Like that's what it is.
Yeah. And the another one, I haven't done this movie on the show, but I'm planning to, is because I did RoboCop and I love
yes.
But the one I was going to say is Starship Troopers.
Oh my God, I love Starship
Troopers. Which is such an awesome movie. But that's also like another. I mean, they're using in that movie the alien is like the other quote unquote, that they're having to attack. They like basically fabricate that they're attacking them so that they have an excuse to fight them. And that movie's about, fascism.
Yeah, exactly. And then when the bugs defend themselves, it's like, oh my God, how could they? And then it's like, you can join the mobile infantry unit. Woo!
Yeah, that's like a super militaristic advertisement.
Oh God, it's great. Like it's I love that movie so much. That movie, RoboCop's good, and then what's the other, Total Recall? That was another one. I love those.
Those are all
like late '80s, early '90s, like really just crappy sci-fi movies that are just great.
There's tons of aspects of Independence Day in this movie with that aspect. That's one thing I noted when I watched it. Oh man, what was I going to mention? We were talking about like the media and the
I do like what Žižek says about at the end, how it really should be when the glasses come off, you see like the world for what it is. Like that was the only thing he said that. But I get why Carpenter did with the glasses on, because not everyone's gonna be walking around with glasses. But like and
visually it's awesome. It's such a cool idea.
Yeah. But like I was like, you know what? Because you talk about ideologies like rose colored glasses, like a rose like gaze of ideology that we see the world in. But when you take them off, it's when you're like, oh no, this is how the world really is. This sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have to, you're doing your job and you're all these things. And the thing too is I'm just looking at some of the other like funny quotes that I put down. I know what it was. One of the things he sees when he puts on the glasses is stay asleep in a few of the areas. I feel like that was a nod to the book, because that like in the short the short story, it's because it's literally people are literally asleep, and he's awake walking around. Like, I don't get it. Why am I the only one awake? And so like that. So being asleep to it is like a weird way to put it, but in some way.
It is weird because like the right has kind of taken over the wake up. Like you always hear like wake up sheeple from like the far right. And it's just, but like back then, and when Carpenter's saying it, like as like you said, a nod to that short story, but it's more like, hey, wake up. Like the world is not what it seems. But that movie, that They Live actually kind of ruined a lot of things for me, because now I go around. They Live in Žižek's analysis of it kind of ruined a lot of things for me, because now that's all I see is like when I look at something and like, what do they really mean by this? Like, what does this advertisement really mean?
Yeah, there's always a hidden meaning behind advertisements. I mean, sometimes it's just like here's like a bottle of Coke. I mean, certain brands like don't need much work. Like if you put the Golden Arches kind of speaks for itself, but there's all kinds of crap we see. You're scrolling through TikTok or Instagram or something. There's ads for all kinds of garbage. And they have to disguise it as something cool that they'll find ways to make it interesting. Like on
but what do the Golden Arches really mean? The gold, you'll never get gold. These arches, if you eat too much McDonald's, you're not going to be able to actually walk up said arches. Like what does the M in McDonald's really mean?
Money?
Morbidly obese.
There's a
They got rid of Ronald McDonald. I know this is totally off subject. They got rid of Ronald McDonald for some reason. It was something bad. I don't know if it was because of it couldn't have been Gacy, because that was way before, but I think it might have been the joke. I forgot what happened. Something happened that they phased out Ronald McDonald.
Was it like the It movie?
It might have been. I think it might have been the It movie. But like, what does Ronald McDonald really mean? He's laughing at you as you eat the McDonald's because he knows it's a scam. Well, that's the ideology behind it.
Well, when I was a kid, I feel like I remember you could go to some McDonald's like in like a big city, and they would actually have someone occasionally. Like I guess they could travel because there's so many McDonald's. Can't have how many people can they hire? But like you go to McDonald's and he'd be like in the ball pit, because I don't know if you ever went to McDonald's and actually had the ball pit.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah, and so like he pops out of the ball pit, because he's creepy.
It's so creepy.
Oh, but the one thing I guess that I was also going to mention that I briefly said is, so they don't ever mention, Piper's name in the movie. No one ever refers to him by any name, and then the credits is like Nada, John Nada, which Nada was, I think, the character in the book. And if somehow I thought like John was just like John Carpenter, I'm just gonna put my name on this guy. But who knows? But it was like meant to be like the everyman person.
Yeah, like he's a nobody.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, nothing,
and
nobody.
What he's like, nada is Spanish for nothing.
It's like I think we even we understand that one.
Yeah, I was like Žižek, I think we get that. Okay.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't who has seen the movie, They Live, I would definitely recommend checking out the what is it called?
Pervert's Guide to Ideology.
So it's I think it's about 2 hours. You can find it on YouTube without any paying of any kind.
Yeah, you can definitely find the clip. He does like his Taxi Driver, whatchamacallit, They Live, and then there's Jaws, and there's a
Clockwork
number of
Orange,
movies.
I think.
Yeah, Clockwork Orange. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole movie, his film is like using bits of movies to kind of describe this idea of ideology, and it's pretty amazing. And I actually was thinking, did he memorize his script for that? You think, or is it just like him free flowing? Like, it's kind of mind boggling as I was watching. Like, is he just like looking at a teleprompter?
I don't know. With him, it could be either one. I just like how he like superimposed himself in the movies.
Yes, right. It's like he'll be like walking around. And he'll be like the guy from Clockwork Orange is like standing next to him.
Yeah,
and while he's talking about him, it's kind of creepy. Actually.
He's like in Taxi Drivers.
Sound of Music is another one, and I think
Sound of Music.
And in that one, they didn't show the movie or something, and I think I saw that it's like some copyright where they weren't allowed to use some clip of it or like some audio from Sound of Music because I guess it's
exactly it was the Climb Every Mountain or whatever. Yeah, I think I remember that.
Like they're only were allowed to show like 20 seconds of it or something,
just a little tiny bit of it. Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing too, I was watching a lot of was a bunch of John Carpenter interviews, and they all actually were kind of the same. Like he kind of repeats it over and over. They ask him about this movie, and he's like, he called it a documentary, which is pretty funny to me. I mean, kind of is, I guess, but considering the Ronald Reagan is what he was trying to like, he literally in one of the interviews he like holds up the middle finger and is like, this is what I was trying to say to Ronald Reagan in my movie. It's also hard to believe this was actually made, and I think only because John Carpenter had made a name for himself already. If this was like his first movie, they're like, no, we're not making this shit.
Oh yeah, for sure. You want to cast who as what?
Right.
Roddy Piper, this guy that's never acted before.
But who actually does a pretty decent job, honestly.
Yeah, he does a good job. And like it's funny enough that like because wrestling is a lot of acting, you already go into it like knowing how to kind of act. And they can already fake fight, so it's
that's
kind of tweaking a little thing here and there. It's just so funny that it's Roddy Piper.
Yeah, when I saw it and I didn't realize he was in it, and I'm like, wait, I know who this guy is, and I'm like, oh crap, it's Roddy Piper, and I'm like, oh, are there any other wrestlers in here? Is it like is Hulk Hogan gonna pop out?
Hey brother, I'm an alien.
Yeah, I think Hulk Hogan would be an alien, with those like gold chains and all that.
Oh, he totally would be an alien.
Or Ric Flair would too. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, woo! Ric Flair is an alien.
Yes. But I think it almost like lends credence to like him being the everyman. They're like just plucking some guy who's not even an actor into it.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
And then the other guy, Frank's character, he's like a super character actor, Keith David. I feel like I looked at his IMDb credit. He has like
he's done a lot,
290 credits on there.
So many films,
but never more than a little bit. Like I don't even know how he has time to do anything if he's in 290 movies and shows and whatnot.
Because he plays such a like typecast role as like if you need like a corrupt. If you need like a corrupt black businessman or like a general for like a split second that has that distinct voice, he's Obama in Rick and Morty for anyone who
I was literally that's exactly what I was gonna say. He's
he is such a typecast character, but he does it so well and it's needed in a lot of movies. That's probably why he does so much.
Oh, so I'm wrong. It's 349 credits.
Good Lord.
Yeah, he's been in 3 different like CSI TV show episodes, of course. which which makes sense. It's like how is he in all three? It's like he's going to be in every single, what's that other legal show? Law and Order. Is he like in Law and Order SVU? Law and Order. Alien Exposure.
I think he was in Law and Order though. He was definitely in some Law and Order episodes. I'm pretty sure.
Let's see. Literally every show you've ever seen in your whole life, he has been in it.
And if people don't know who we're talking about, like once you hear his voice, you'll be like, "Oh, that guy."
Yeah, and
you see him, you'll be like, "Oh, that guy."
Like in the whole movie, there couldn't be more. I feel like only about half the movie there's dialogue. It seems like to me.
Carpenter probably did that on purpose because he knew Roddy Piper couldn't remember that many lines.
Yeah, he's been hitting the head too many times.
He's been hitting way too many times.
Well, I mean, did he die from? I guess
he died. It was probably like I think it was like a heart attack, like brought on by like steroids and stuff. Yeah,
all around like 50, 60-year-olds.
Exactly. I think the average age for them is like 60. It's really sad.
But the only other sort of like theme that I put in my little notes here that we didn't talk about as much is sort of like the idea of like the media in it, because you like the major piece of this, like the finale of the movie is them going into this gigantic TV studio where they're going to cut the signal, and so I think about like the fact that there's only like 6 media companies that own, or even maybe there's less, like 3 media companies that own everything. And in this presumably there really isn't any other, and they refer to it, I think it's channel 57 or channel 58 is like the channel that everyone is always watching, which is the 2 newscasters who are aliens or constantly giving the news, and they're also like super chipper and like really kind of disconcerting. But I don't know how like the media plays into it, because they're always watching TV. There's always like a TV on in the movie. Like you walks back, like in the old days, you'd have a electronics store with like a bunch of TVs in the window. Yeah. Like there'd be people watching TVs, and they have a TV in a window of someone's house. Constantly TV.
I think it just goes on with like another distraction. Like you need distractions to get through your life, like under capitalism, and it goes along with the advertisements. How like it's not really what it seems. And so when you look at the news channel, like with the glasses, you see that they're both aliens, and like why it's always on is people are just glued to the television, just watching what's going on and watching the news constantly. And really, that was, I think Carpenter probably is showing like the transformation from like printed news to a television.
Yeah,
and plus like you're starting to get into like very soon after this, you really get into CNN cable news, like especially for the Persian Gulf, like the first Iraq
like
War.
89, 90, I think. Yeah, pretty close to it.
So it's getting into like, that's the writing on the wall is like Ted Turner's CNN is coming down the pipe. So like that whole aspect of like people are now just glued to this new technology, like cable news and news in general being on the television, that it's just another distraction. And the aliens obviously own it, and the aliens can pump more propaganda through that in order to get you to believe that everything's fine, everything's good, consume, obey.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the one thing I remember too is when they have a TV in that little like tent city, which is kind of interesting. Like they have a TV that's like set up.
Was
outside.
the TV a surveillance thing for the aliens, or was it just the like watches they could talk to each other?
They just used the signal through the TV so that you wouldn't see the aliens. I think. Gotcha. I don't think that it was a way they would surveil.
Yeah, I just remember their watches. They could talk to each other and be like,
"Oh no, you know what they had? They had these like little like drones that went around that had, but you couldn't see them, presumably.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was. But the TV is in like the little encampment they have, and one of the guys who's there is sort of like a homeless guy. He kind of lives on the streets, and he's watching a commercial where they're talking about like glamorous life, and this guy's sitting on like a couch in the middle of like a park, watching TV of like some guy on a commercial, and then later you discover he's like the guy that shows him around. He gets rich because he sells out. Like he wants this thing he sees on TV, literally, which is like what you're saying. He bought into capital, and he's like, okay, I'll do what you say, and he's now rich, and he shows them around. So it's like I think it makes sense. So they're showing you what you need to aspire to be, so you keep plugging along.
Yeah. Yep.
Which it's. I mean, has that changed?
No. Also, the drone thing, that's really creepy, especially now, like police departments wanting to use drones and just what we do overseas and then what we're starting to do domestically. Like, that's really, Carpenter was kind of ahead of his time, thinking that like they're going to use drones to spy on people that you can't see because they're thousands of feet in the air, but they can see you with their 4K cameras.
I can't, like, I'm trying to think if there's any like sci-fi alien movies before this that uses like a drone. Like, I don't know.
Carpenter's he's a time traveler, man. Who knows?
I mean, it really was because he doesn't. I think when Piper puts on the glasses, like in the alley, he sees the thing, sees the little drone. He had stolen the guns and he shoots it. He's like, oh, like not. He says some funny line like, "I don't think so, little fella," to the thing, and then he shoots it down.
And who are you, little fella? Come and show 'em where I am. Not nice.
And that sounds like something you would say like in the wrestling ring too. Like every line is like what he would say in the wrestling ring.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
He really was the perfect actor to play John Nada.
Yeah, it's.
But no, like this drones, that is really creepy to think. Like now you mentioned that, like to think about it, like wow, Carpenter was kind of ahead of his time thinking about that because, I mean, granted, like in the, you don't really have the surveillance police state because the technology hadn't caught up until really the internet when it comes along. Obviously, you had like surveillance back then, but
like
there weren't a lot of
CCTV.
Yeah, there weren't cameras everywhere like there are now. No one had cell phones. Like I've talked to people that done clandestine shit back in the 80s, and they're like, it's so much easier back then because no one had phones. There weren't cameras everywhere. There weren't drones. It's just like now you can't go anywhere without being on camera. But back then you didn't. So like back then you could go without like someone seeing you and knowing where you were or who you were. Now that when Carpenter throws in those drones, it's kind of like foreshadowing what's to come.
Yeah, that now I kind of want to like look up to see. Like I didn't see any mention of the drones. Like you only see one or two times. So he shoots the one, and then maybe later they see another. But I don't.
They're probably super expensive to make. So he's like, all right, we're gonna have
one shot at this thing.
One shot at this. I don't have a big budget.
Yeah, I think I don't feel like the movie cost more than like 20 million. Let's see. It's like really, I mean, all of his early movies are pretty cheap. I feel like the only ones that were a little more expensive were like the Escape from New York. Those were a little bit more expensive.
Oh my God, I love Escape from New York and Escape from LA.
Budget $3 million. So not even 20.
Really?
Yeah, $3 million.
Wow.
And it made 13, although I bet it's made a bunch in the last 10
yeah,
years
definitely.
Streaming and all that.
And you're doing Escape from one of those places, right? Later on.
Yeah, actually, I'm supposed to record that one I think next week even.
You doing New York or LA?
I'm gonna do New York. I'll do New York, and then I think eventually I'll have to do LA too. It's like
I love that. I love those movies so much.
Yeah,
they're so cheesy.
The first one is pretty awesome. The LA one isn't as good, but it's still pretty good.
It's still Actually, I think I watched the LA one first, and then I went back and watched the.
I did too, because I think it came out. It was like a little bit later, and I was a little bit older to see it.
Oh, May Snake! It's great.
Well, the first one, the New York one, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's like a pretty good call out to like the cold, like it's super mentioning of the Cold War. I mean, you're literally talking about Russians and
that
prison, right? Isn't that like the New York is like the prison?
Yeah, New York's the prison, and like LA becomes the prison after New York.
And he has to rescue the president. Kurt Russell has to rescue the president from like the rebels.
Kurt Russell. Yeah, and then in LA, it's the same thing. He has to rescue them from him, like rescue the president's daughter from the Maoist third worldist rebels.
Right. But actually, that reminds me, in this movie, which again takes place during the Cold War, but there's only one mention in the whole movie, which kind of surprised me, of Russia or USSR, Soviet Union. And it's later when they're like plotting, they're in their like little hideout. They're like, counting their guns and seeing what they have as their resources. And they say that they call the police have made them. Oh, I know what it was. He says that some of the police are humans. Most of them are actually humans, and they tell them that they're communists and they're trying to take over the government. So that's how they can convince the police to like go in and attack them for no reason.
Dun dun dun. Now, were the aliens in the Soviet Union though? Or the Soviet Union was able to keep the aliens out? Gorbachev was an alien, and that's why the Soviet Union fell. Boom, called it. Well, you heard it right here, folks.
So they were alien free until Gorbachev swooped in.
Until Gorby swooped in and tore down that wall. And Pizza Hut, man, fucking Pizza Hut.
Yeah, the little stain on his forehead was like the chip.
What's the?
that was the clue. Everyone was supposed to know.
Everyone was supposed to know.
But that's the other thing too. And like in the movie, you see a bunch of cops, and I think of like you always think of like cops as like kind of the class traitor, but then it's almost like double class traitor. Like the aliens are also cops in this movie.
Yeah,
and that's like weird because they don't need to be because they're presumably wealthy. Like they have unlimited resources and wealth, but they're cops, and I guess it's to convince them.
No, yeah, and also it goes back to like we're talking about like colonial forces and imperialistic forces. You're always going to have the local populace like be in the defense force, but your officers are going to be white. Your officer corps is going to be white. Like you look in India, the First and Second World War, you had Indian fighters fighting for the British Empire, but the officers were white. Same thing in America with especially World War One. There's white officers when the Harlem Hellfighters went over to fight in France, etc. And then the Civil War too. You're going to have black fighters, but you're going to have white officers. So it could be like that. Like they want to make sure the human police are actually doing what they're supposed to do. So they're kind of embedded with them.
Right. Because I think that you don't know who is a cop, sorry, an alien in the cops until later when he obviously has the glasses. I think the very first scene where he puts them on, like a bunch of cops like chase him in an alley, and he like takes them down because he's like he has the shotgun. He kills a couple of them, and they're both aliens. And then he won't kill the human cop. He'll only kill the aliens. Right, just the aliens. Yeah. Well, I really wanted him to steal the cop car in that scene too. Like he gets into the cop car to look for the gun. But I really wanted to steal the cop car. Like when I saw it the first time.
That's an homage to Jason Kai's Settlers, is that the white working class won't turn on the police, but they'll shoot the aliens.
Yeah, because I don't think he does kill it really in the movie in general, he doesn't really shoot any humans.
No, he only shoots the aliens.
In the bank, he only shoots the aliens, and then like the final scene where he's like going through the TV studio, he's only shooting the aliens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that before. It's kind of interesting. He's siding a little bit with the Capitol Protector. So is John Nada everyman, or is he?
John Nada? John Nada is just another settler.
Well, I mean, he does. He still. Yeah, he does.
But he did pick up arms against the actual invading force. So he's like, I don't know, maybe he's like halfway
well,
there.
I mean, like if you look at it from like the Fanon book, where like the people who are uprising against the colonists initially don't include like those wealthy people, but eventually they have to kind of like go along, because they want to live, and so they want to retain power under like presumably their own functioning government of some kind.
Now people need to definitely go see this movie and come up with their own opinion about what they think about what certain things are what.
Yeah.
Is John Nada just a settler? Is he revolutionary? Was he right? Was he wrong? What do the aliens really mean?
Yeah, that kind of just messed with my head because I think of him as like this everyman good character, but then I guess you could say that even like those everyman people have flaws. I'll give him that one. I'll say he's flawed, even though he's like the blue collar, guy coming down. Like, and the other funny, hilarious thing is apparently he like chatted a bunch with Piper about how to like give him a backstory for his character. So apparently he like told him this whole story, but like then John Carpenter's like, don't tell me what you actually came up with. Like, I don't want to know. I just want you to like internalize it. And I think like he said later in an interview that it was like his wife and daughter had been like killed in like a car crash or something weird. And like, that's why he was like, you know, he has nothing to lose. Drifter. Yeah. He has nothing to lose. Which...
Now, the question is, did John Nada vote for Trump?
Ooh. I think he voted for Jill Stein.
I don't know. You got to think about it. So like, how old is he supposed to be? In the 80s, he's supposed to be like 30 something. So by the time Trump rolls around, he's what, like 60, 70 maybe?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking John Nada started watching Fox News and votes for Trump at least once.
Yeah, maybe yeah. maybe the second time he writes in, you know, he writes in the aliens.
Yeah.
He writes in.
He keeps the glasses and sees that that Hillary and Trump are both aliens.
He puts on the glasses and it just says you lose either way. Yeah, that's the you know the yeah. That's a whole nother. That's a whole.
John Nada doesn't vote. He joined the 3%ers. He joined like some militia.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, if he lives in the end, yeah. And the other thing that Frank ends up, you know, he ends up getting shot by the traitor.
Yeah, I know, right?
Which is such like a bummer. I mean, you knew like it was kind of like you saw
sucks.
it.
Yeah.
But he's like the, you know, he finally wakes up to help him, and you know he gets shot in the head for his efforts.
I remember when that happened. I remember that too. It was like, damn, he just got good. And then,
well, because the John Carpenter and like all of his movies is always like that little like twist where you think something's different. Like, I mean, it's a good, you know, but you think that Holly is good because she shows up to the protest or the little rally thing they got going on. But immediately when I saw her there, I'm like, this is a red flag. She's not. She's faking it. She's
an agent. She's an agent provocateur.
She was just, you know, well, and then they bust in right after. Like, she clearly signals them, and that's what I assume. Like, she signaled them to where their hideout was.
She's a Fed. Yeah.
You know how I know? But she was a Fed. Like, shouldn't his like tip off been the fact that she lived in this like huge ass mansion with like a bunch of crap that just like was super ugly.
Listen, look, it'd been a while for John Nada. He was just like taken away by her. He had the glasses on. He couldn't see.
Oh yeah, he had a headache from it, right? Because it's so painful. Yeah. That's the other thing too is like you can't keep them on too long because it, you know, fucks with your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just trying. I was looking in the Wikipedia page to see, you know, apparently like it didn't get very much play when it came out as like a movie. Like there was good reviews for it, but like, you know, I think the New York Times actually wrote it was a good movie, but it says the flatness of They Live is doubly disappointing, which is saying it's inconsistent and the film tries to abide by its own game plan. Like what does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
It just means the New York Times wrote a bunch of words to tell you not to go see it because
it's like on Rotten Tomatoes where you see like it has like 100% by the viewers, but like 0 or like very low from the people who like the professional reviewers. It's just like they're so detached from reality, they don't know what people actually want to watch.
Yeah, that's true. Or they just like they have to give certain movies that they know are, you know, that the State Department helped write.
Yeah, because the aliens actually own the New York Times, so you can't have everyone seeing They Live. They'll catch on.
Oh, so it said, yeah. So apparently the person who wrote that movie review is like been the person at the New York Times, like the literary and film critic since the 1970s. So she's been there for ages, and so she apparently knows what she's talking about, but I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
The Washington Post says, it's just John Carpenter, as usual, digging deep with a toy shovel.
Damn.
They Live is full of black holes, and the acting is wretched. The effects are second rate. In fact, the whole thing is so preposterous, it makes V look like masterpiece theater. What the?
What?
They all are panning this. And then the Globe and Mail says the movie never gets beyond the pop Orwell premise. The social commentary wipes clean with a dry towelette. It's not intrusive and not pedantic, just lighter than air. Of course, those are all the capitalist newspapers writing
God.
Of course, they're not going to give this a good review.
Jesus. That's when you're like overeducated and like and still don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
And it says, but the Rotten Tomatoes 85%.
Oh yeah, because it's great. Because we all know what it means. We all know exactly what he was trying to say.
Yes. Well, obviously, in 1988, do you think the New York Times is going to be like Reagan is bad?
Oh yeah.
They're not going to say that.
they're about to help destroy what's his face who blew the whistle in the Iran Contra scandal.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. They need to save their.
They're about to assassinate Gary Webb. So they can't have people thinking too much.
Yeah, and then it actually mentions the Pervert's Guide for the Ideology, and he says it's a forgotten masterpiece of Hollywood left. So that's the review everyone out there should be listening to, and also
that's what Zizek is like. It's a forgotten masterpiece of the Hollywood left.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't like really think of John Carpenter. Like I don't think he's like a leftist, but I think he understood what he could view the world in a way like. Being in Hollywood, I bet like he doesn't have a lot of Hollywood friends.
Yeah, I can see that. Or Carpenter's an alien and he just wants to make a movie to make us think that the aliens are actually there. The whole movie's just ideology. There you go. We have to put on the glasses to actually see the movie.
So wait. If you watch the movie with the glasses.
Yeah. If you watch the movie with the glasses, you get the true meaning behind it. And that is go to McDonald's and buy a Coke.
Oh man, yeah. But anyone out there who has not seen this movie, I definitely recommend it. But I don't know if we have any final thoughts on the movie you want to impart to the audience, and also maybe you should also tell everyone about your awesome podcast too. In one breath.
Final words on the movie's great. I don't care what the New York Times says. I think the movie, when you watch the movie first and then watch Żyzek's analysis, but like so come up with your own analysis before you watch his. I think that Carpenter in this movie really kind of walks that fine line from being like on the nose to being still something to think about. Because obviously, everyone knows, I think most people understand that like advertisement, a lot of stuff is, even on the surface, is fake. Like when you see like a commercial for a resort, you don't think it's going to be perfect 100% of the time. You have like an idea that like, all right, it's not going to be that pretty. But like when you start digging into it deeper, it's like, why do they want you to come to this resort to relax and like blow off steam? And it's kind of like to forget that your life under capitalism sucks. I think Carpenter does a really good job of not being too on the nose and still leaving something for the imagination. Podcast is Dixieland of the Proletariat. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. It's myself and I have two indigenous co-hosts. And if you want to listen to a podcast where two indigenous people yell at a white guy for like 2 hours, it's fucking great. They joke and say that this is my reparations for all the bad stuff that white people have done. But no, so we do a number of stuff. We've talked about like the Sharecroppers Union in Alabama. We have different people on about talking about different organizations. We've talked about, we're doing an episode next week on the Trail of Tears. So we just talk about just history, like I said, just from a perspective that needs to be spoken about, needs to be seen. A non-Americanized white lens of history, like what really actually happened. And basically, it started because I got really tired of people thinking that the South is just full of white racists and idiots. There's a lot of good people here doing a lot of good things. So yeah, Dixieland the Proletariat. .prol, it's at DOT prol, all one word. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I think is still the old Dixie Prol, but everywhere else is .prol. It's linktree/.prol.
Yeah, I'll put it in the notes as well for anyone who hasn't listened to it. But yeah, I'm a big fan, and you should definitely check it out because there's lots of honestly history of the South that I was like woefully unaware of. And I mean, you just look at our education system, and is anyone surprised? But yeah, so you should definitely check that out. And then obviously for this, you can look at Left of the Projector on all the same socials. With Left of the Projector Pod. Nelson, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great
No problem, Evan. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course.